Hi, everybody. It's Bibliovino here, Michelle, talking today with Yael Adler, who is the author of this book, From Gypsy to Jersey. She's going to be joining us in just a second. She's going to share about her journey as an adoptee, finding out who her real parents were. And so she's joined. I'm going to invite her, and she can request as well. And she's going to tell us about why she wrote this book to help adoptees to know about her journey and to know that it was okay to ask where you come from. So I'm excited to have her join me today. So see, I think, Yael, you can just, there should be a button that says request to join, or you can say, you can see the one that says I invited you, and you can just say accept. I'll try it again. Maybe it didn't work. Oh, she joined.
Hi. Hi,
Hi.
Sarah. How you
How are
doing?
you?
I'm good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. I'm so glad you could take time to talk with me today.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent. I enjoyed your book. It is not a long read. It's a kind of a short book, but it is so jam-packed with just like feel-good awesomeness. Like I have to say, reading the book, it really does give you, hope in a bleak world. Like, we're in a world right now that's very difficult to find happy things in, with war and with disease and all these things happening. You were able to craft an amazing journey for us, and it is a real life journey. It is the journey you actually undertook, trying to find out where you came from and more about your original heritage. So can you tell me a little bit about that pressure you started to feel? I know it was around when you turned 30, and you started to feel a little bit of a pressure of, I kind of want to know more than what I've ever asked before. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, it really happened all because I stumbled across all of these documents and things that I found cleaning out my mother's apartment. So, I kind of stumbled across these documents, these photos, and all of a sudden I'm seeing pieces of my life, but I know I didn't really have the whole story. So that's really what fueled me to kind of want to learn more and explore that further. So I really took those steps to do that. And a big part of that was tracking down the attorney who handled my adoption almost 30 years later. And the fact that I was able to so easily find him online was pretty amazing. And, he just was able to open so many doors for me, and his willingness to really help me throughout my whole journey was pretty incredible.
Yeah, and honestly, like I hope that he is the subject of your next book, because this man is he's so fascinating. Just the journey of his own life, and the things that he kind of stumbled into in life that led to this amazing calling that he was able to follow and to have such a huge part of your life.
Absolutely. I even joked with him. I think I put it in the book too. As I was interviewing him to learn more about, Romania and his experiences getting involved in adoptions, I said to him, I was like, you should really write a book because your life is pretty incredible too. But yeah, it was just a really interesting time when he was doing this adoption work in Romania because communism had just ended. There was a lot of really interesting historical pieces there that played a significant role in my adoption and so many other adoptions that took place in the early 90s. And he was really one of the only people doing that work there because people had no clue. There was really no strict procedures and processes going on at the time. So everyone was kind of figuring it out and learning as they went. But he was really one of the main people doing adoption work at that time. So it was interesting.
Yeah. And you say that he was so super easy to talk to. He put people just in a place of comfort, and they were able to open up to him, and that really paved the way for him to set up all these connections that he had across Romania at the time, which I assume was just absolutely chaotic.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there. Just to kind of give you a quick backdrop there, there was the country was being led by dictator Nicolae Ceausescu, and he was putting enormous pressure on women to conceive in an effort to really build Romania's population, and so that he could have more communist people. And women were so desperate because the country was in complete poverty. They really had nothing to provide whatsoever, their families, and women were just so desperate. They really didn't know what to do. They were attempting to self-abort. They were turning over their children to the orphanages. They were exploring adoptions. They really had no support They were under, just a tremendous amount of stress, and there was no money at all. There was nothing to provide. So it was a really difficult time. And, a lot of people had to make really difficult decisions.
And so that was where your birth mother was. That was the environment she was in. And she found herself in a place where just the abject poverty and the fact that she wasn't in a supportive relationship just necessitated that she make a decision like this where she had to give up a child. And so I was right there with you, like every step of the way as you're going through this process and you're learning more about people, and then to actually come in contact with your birth mother. And honestly, that's something that I think for international adoptions is probably pretty rare.
Yeah, there was a lot, a lot to that. One, I was never in an orphanage setting, which, as I connect with more and more adoptees, I've learned that was really a rare situation. I had actually lived with my birth mom in the home for 2 years, and it's not like today where there are so many conversations about, family preservation and things like that. None of that existed. So there was really no support for her. And, when she was approached regarding putting me up for adoption, she really did feel like it might be the best option for me and really give me a chance to have a better life. Now, that narrative has really kind of taken over, and a lot of people think that's really the only narrative that exists when it comes to adoption, is just that all adoptions are beautiful and it's all about just giving the child a better life. It's not all rainbows and butterflies. I was fortunate to have a happy ending, but it would be remiss of me if I didn't mention that so many adoptees don't have that experience, and that's really not the case. But I am grateful that I was able to connect with her and have some type of relationship with her. And it actually kind of makes me think of this little excerpt from my book. If you don't mind, I could actually read it.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of like touch on that. So during the search process, when I decided to search and I was working with this person, Daniel in Romania, who was kind of a private investigator, we got very close to that point. And I want to just share a little bit from my book on that experience. So Daniel was very good at keeping me in the loop and letting me know where he was in the process and who he had been communicating with. Each time I heard from him via text was thrilling, not knowing what new piece of information I would learn. And fairly quickly, in a matter of just weeks, it was revealed that Daniela was alive. Wow, I thought, this is something I really needed to wrap my head around. My birth mother is actually alive. It was a strange thing to imagine. All these years, I thought she was deceased, and I had been wrong. She is alive, and Daniel found out where she lives. He had everything he needed to now make the trip from Brasov, where he lived, to Sipriush, the village where Daniela was now living. This was getting exciting, but kind of crazy. I had to pinch myself a couple of times to remind myself that this was actually happening. I tried to put myself in Daniela's place for a second. Picture one day just going about your daily routine when suddenly there's a knock on your door and it is a stranger asking you about the child you put up for adoption 28 years ago. What a bomb to drop on someone. That moment would very likely change her life forever. I don't know if I would have had the courage to do what Daniel was doing, so I sure was relieved that I had him doing all the heavy lifting for me. And soon the weekend was finally here, the weekend that Daniel was planning to go see Daniela. It was a long drive for him, about 7 hours one way. All I could do was wait by my phone. It was 7 o'clock in the morning when I woke up. My older daughter had gotten me up a couple of times in the middle of the night, so Mark let me sleep in. I must have grabbed my phone to check if I heard anything from Daniel, since Romania was 7 hours ahead. The phone was still in my hand when I woke. My eyes widened. I had a text from Daniel. Oh my God, I thought, this was it. What's he going to say? I took a deep breath and opened the message. It said, "I'm with Daniela. She would like to speak with you."
I love that. And you had this amazing kind of go-between. And Daniel, he had actually been a contact for the lawyer that you had worked with before. And so he was able to make that personal connection with her. And, that facilitation was, it was just so instrumental in the way that everything played out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so grateful for him because, when I finally did make the trip out there, he really acted as my my tour guide, my translator. So he really was with me every step of the way, from the search process all the way to the reunion, which, I mean, for any adoptee, those are two really big life-changing events that are a very big deal.
And I assume that you have, made contact with other Romanian adoptees and kind of shared your story and heard their stories. My husband is an adoptee and does not know about his birth family. And, I'm at the point where I'm like, listen, you're 51. You may not want to know who they are, but like, can we just look at some medical records or something? Like, I feel like there's some information that we need to know. So what has your experience been in connecting with other people who went through this, the same process of adoption through that avenue?
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up such a good point in terms of just medical records and things like that. I mean, just something as simple as obtaining information like medical records or your birth certificate. I mean, these are challenges that adoptees have to go through all of the time. And it's not so easy for us to obtain such basic information. So that's definitely one of the challenges, that are kind of out there. And, luckily, it was actually funny. The attorney who handled my adoption not long ago had said to me that he was just cleaning out his house and actually found original documents from my case file, which I thought was so wild. So he had actually mailed them to me, and I got to see all of these. I mean, the paper was so thin that, with the ink and everything, it was incredible. And they were all in Romanian, and some were translated and some weren't, but there were just photos. And it was pretty cool to get that in the mail and just kind of sift through all of that. But I mean, other adoptees that I've connected to, it's a challenge for them. Some have to really fight to try to get that information, and others have been able to obtain it more successfully.
And that's just one storyline of adoption too. Like there's so many now with global adoption and international adoption. These people are going to have to go through that process. And sometimes that's going to be very difficult. I know that you're very grateful for how your journey ended up, but it was kind of a dream experience, and it happened pretty quickly when you turned 30, and then a couple of years later you were able to bring this all to fruition.
Yeah, and that just goes to timing. I just kind of feel like it was meant to be, and everything kind of happened right before COVID exploded. So everything just fell into place so perfectly that it just, in hindsight, it makes me feel like, that was really the time that it was supposed to all happen. And I'm so glad that it did, because I was able to really, do the search, complete the trip, and write my book all within, a year, which was pretty crazy. So, I'm very grateful for that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing that we see in the book, and we're able to kind of explore with you, is the Roma culture and the history of persecution of the Roma people, and all of the things that go along with them being that sort of underrepresented minority, even in Romania. Tell us a little bit about what you've discovered about the Romanian people and the Romani, and just the things that are happening in those communities now.
Yeah, and I'm definitely still continuously learning more and more about that culture, because I really do find it so fascinating. But the Roma people, Roma and Gypsy are synonymous. I use them interchangeably when I speak. But the Roma are actually, I've been told that they have originated from India. And they were known to travel, and they kind of spread out all across Eastern Europe and all over. And it's really a very interesting culture. A lot of the traditions that they practice, I learned that as early as 12 or 13, arranged marriages are actually still performed. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And, it was just something to really sit back on and think, wow, at 12 or 13, I could have just had an arranged marriage and my life would have looked very different. And the same goes for education. I likely would not have gotten an education. I know my birth sister, she received very little to no education. And a lot of the women, they stay home, they tend to the kids, they tend to the husband, and that's really mostly their role. And unfortunately, due to discrimination, a lot of the children stay home from school. They don't even go to school because they get bullied. And it's a really difficult experience for them. So in many cases, the kids stay home from school and have a problem integrating with their peers in schools. So yeah, it's definitely interesting to look at the differences of what my life would have looked like versus what it is now.
You also, though, when you met your birth family, you got to see kind of a side of that culture where women are given more freedom. I mean, obviously they're still very constrained within their family structure, but I know you heard from a cousin that your mom actually was one to stand up and speak and be in front of the men in that kind of a leadership way in the ways that she could. And then your sister's husband also was very supportive and very helpful to her in her role, and not so much that she was looked down upon in the family or seen as unimportant. So they actually too have had, coming from I know an abusive situation before, but your mom now has a loving husband who values her. And so what kinds of changes do you think are then happening in the traveler community and sort of the move with feminism? It's kind of an outside idea for them, but what kinds of changes are you seeing in that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think the society is modernizing, and they're definitely constantly evolving. So things are definitely different, while they are definitely still practicing some of their, more traditional ways. I think they're modernizing like with everybody else, and they're definitely the women are definitely finding I think a little bit more independence and things breaking away from some of that traditional cultural aspects.
And what about getting your mom and your sister to the US? I know that was something when the book lets off that you were really looking forward to and really hoping to accomplish, and things are still not quite where they need to be in the world for everything to go smoothly for that. But how is that process going?
Yeah, I really hope that can happen. I think that's something I think about a lot. And as I mentioned in my book, that really would bring just my whole experience full circle for me. It's something that I'm hoping Danny once again can play an instrumental role in, with assisting them to kind of get their traveling visa and go for their interviews and all of that stuff, because it is kind of a process. It's not so simple for them to just say, oh, okay, I'm going to go visit in the US. There's definitely a process there, and there's they have to go through some great lengths for sure. But I'm definitely going to continue being persistent with it, because it is something that I would love to see. And I think it would bring my birth mother just so much joy and happiness to see my life here. So I think it would be a really fulfilling experience for everyone involved. So I'm definitely going to keep trying.
And another thing that you had to deal with, and I think this is probably pretty universal as far as an adoptee, is, making sure that your adoptive family didn't feel as though you were devaluing, the life that you were given by looking for your birth mother. Is that something that you hear from adoptees a lot, that's kind of a difficult conversation when it happens?
Absolutely. I think as adoptees, we feel a sense of loyalty to our parents, which I think makes a lot of sense, because they have done a lot for us, not in all cases, but, in my case, I did have a pretty stable and, good upbringing, and it was definitely a hard conversation to have, as it is with many other adoptees, because you don't want to give off the impression that you're unhappy with your life or your relationship with your parents simply because you're seeking other information. And that's the big thing, is that it doesn't have to be one or the other. You can still have a happy and a great relationship with your parents while still wanting to learn more about your roots. And I think that's important for people to know and understand.
And you also went from a persecuted minority in the Roma community to being raised by a Jewish family, and so you got to see, two different cultures that dealt with that, at least in their past. I mean, obviously, we haven't fixed all the problems that go along with the persecution of Jews, but seeing that from both sides, how valuable was it for you to have that sort of inside information into the way that your Roma family may have been treated, or what the things they had to go through?
Yeah, I mean, in doing research for my book and learning about the two different cultures, it was definitely interesting to see some parallels between the minority groups that, still exist, and certainly did exist in the past as well. So I thought that was kind of, eye-opening to learn about for sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of people still don't realize that the Roma, the Gypsy population was directly persecuted by the Nazis as well. That they were, not just systematically getting rid of Jews, but anyone they saw to be not up to their standard, whether that was because they were Jewish or they were Romani or they were homosexual or they were, there were so many things that they were trying to stamp out of their culture that the Roma and the Jews actually shared part of that in their story, that interference by the Nazis.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And the discrimination still does exist today. I mean, there's Roma everywhere, but particularly Roma living in Eastern Europe, I mean, they have it really bad, where they are constantly mistreated and looked down upon, in society, and it's very brutal for some of them. So it's really unfortunate to kind of learn about and hear about. But like I said, I do think the society is evolving and modernizing, and I think there are definitely changes being made, and there's more support for them, which is great to see.
You didn't talk much about it. I know your daughter is still very young, but how has she responded to all of this? What is she seeing? I don't know how much you've shared with her, but what has she seen and how has she responded to it?
I haven't really been able to have that conversation yet with her. My oldest daughter, I have three kids. My oldest is only 6 years old, and I feel like when the time is right, or when I feel like she's reached a certain maturity level to really be able to kind of understand it, is when I think I'll just have the conversation with her. There have been times where I've tried to kind of start and initiate that conversation, whether we're watching like a Disney movie or something where I feel like, oh, okay, maybe this could be something where I could kind of present it in a way that she would understand. But it's complex. It's hard to have that conversation with her, and I guess I'm still trying to figure out how to frame it in a way that she could understand it.
But I know too, you were talking about getting to your, 30th year and some of the things that kind of compelled you to start looking at this. I think when we have children, that is another, outside influence that we suddenly have, where everything about our life is sort of tunneled. When you're looking at your child and you're thinking about their future, I think you also then start to think about your past and the people who were a part of your upbringing and all of the things that got you to where you were at that point when you brought that child into the world. I know that when I had my daughter, my grandmother was no longer living, the one that I had been closest to. And, that was one of the forefront things in my mind was, gosh, I wish she could have known my daughter and that my daughter could have known her. I think that really does pinpoint some of that when you are bringing your child into the world.
Absolutely. I mean, there are so many things when, especially when my kids are around the age of 2, which is the age that I was when I was put up for adoption. There's just something about that age. And I always because 2 is a very clingy to mommy age. It's really interesting, and it's triggering at times, because it does make me kind of think, like, was I clingy to my birth mother? What was that attachment and that traumatic experience like? I think about that all the time. And even I posted just, when my daughter has a bad dream or something, and I lay kind of on the floor in her room next to her crib, to kind of soothe her, it kind of takes me back to when I was in Romania, and I didn't have a bed and we slept on the floor, and those thoughts kind of enter my head at that point. So it's definitely, when I look at my children and we have these different experiences and exchanges, it definitely can be triggering at times, and makes me think about Romania, and makes me think about how I can tell them and share that with them in some way at some point.
Yeah, and I can just imagine looking into the face of your 2-year-old child and thinking, there's nothing I would do that wouldn't keep them with me. There's no way that I could hand them off. And so not understanding just the pressure that your birth mother was under, and all of the things that were coming at her that would make her go to this place of this is best for my child. And I have to say that really got me in the book, because my daughter is right now living with my sister. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But what it came down to was I could be selfish and keep her with me, and deal with the things that were making that not work. Or I could do what I thought was best for her at that time and put her in the care of my sister in a different environment, in a way that she could, what I felt she could grow and be what she needed to be. And she has. And now seeing her just this completely blooming child that I had lost, I didn't have that child anymore. She was, because I did that for her, she's able to be in this place. As hard as it was, I was able to give her that gift of doing what was best for her, even though it hurt me terribly.
Yeah, I mean, I think, nobody really knows and understands the different hardships and the different situations that kind of, influence our decision making. And at that time, it really was a very desperate time. It wasn't that she didn't want me or didn't love me. That was not the case. It was that she truly was making a sacrifice, so that I could have a better life. And, when I speak to her now, I feel that love that she has for me, and I can just see it the way she looks at me. And there's no doubt in my mind that a day hasn't gone by that she's thought about me since my adoption. And I think that's just huge, because for so many adoptees, that's what we think about, like, are we thought about? Are we missed?
Right.
These are things that come to our mind. So the fact that I feel that, it's a good feeling, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. And, just becoming a mother, it puts you in mind of all of the things that have brought you to the place where you are, and all of the people who have had a hand in that. And, I hope that too, someday she'll be able to look at everything that we went through and say, wow, like, I'm so grateful that, that I was given the opportunity to soar like that, in a way that was difficult for everybody, but it turned out great. So I know that your birth mom and your adopted mom have got to be thinking that, that you were able to make this journey and complete this part of your life, and be given this wonderful gift of two women who love you so much.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I just have to say, like, I'm telling you, if you're looking for something to just bring up your mood, if you've been down a little bit and you need to get some happiness in your life, like, this is the book to get. It is a quick read, but it is absolutely beautiful. And it really does just let you know that with all the turmoil that's happening in the world and all the things that are happening, we've got people right now who are becoming refugees and having to make these decisions with their family. There can be happy endings. And so I was very blessed by your story and your happy ending. So thank you so much for writing that for us.
Thank you so much for all your kind words. I really do appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for talking with me today. I really have enjoyed it. If you can get a copy of Yale's book, it is available on Amazon in paperback and on Kindle. And just, bless yourself or bless somebody else with it today, because it's a great, heartwarming story.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed speaking with you.
Absolutely. Have a great evening.
You too. Take care.